There's other players out there with the courage and with the kahunas to hold out, and some of them being more deserving than others. And we're going to start with San Francisco. They've got two guys right now, one guy that's holding out but holding in, and another guy that has not showed up to camp at all. So let's start out with the guy that has not showed up to camp at all. An 11-time Pro Bowler, a guy that's been significant to what the 49ers' success has been, Trent Williams, the best offensive tackle in football. He's currently making I'm looking right now. It's possible he's seeking additional guarantees at the end of his 6-year extension. He inked back in 2021, which pays him in excess of $30 million per season. So the biggest thing with him is he's not really getting any guaranteed money. And You've seen the record with him where it's something like 2-10 every time that he's not played on the roster. You could debate Trent Williams is the most valuable player on this roster as a whole.
That's interesting. I think there is a debate for that. I think you would lose that debate, but I think there is an argument to be made there. That 49ers offensive line, it's the only thing 49ers fans are humble about. It's not very good. If you take Trent Williams out of that mix, in which I was talking to a 49er fan later this week, he's like, if he's a team player, then he'll, figure out the contract and take a little bit less and be there. I'm like, Trent Williams once held out to the trade deadline because he hated the Washington Commanders so much, or the Washington Redskins at that time. Hated them so much because he wanted their money. Trent Williams is not going to play. And he understands that the bill is coming due for the San Francisco 49ers very soon here. We talked about it earlier with Brock Purdy. There is a projection out there that he gets $65 million a year. Trent Williams wants to get paid, and he knows his leverage. It's one of the few holdouts that I'm like, yeah, man, get your bag. You have all the leverage. You have leapfrog Brandon Aiyuk for a contract. That offensive line needs Trent Williams. If he is not available, or if this lingers into the regular season, that's an issue. And then it also leans into the Brandon Aiyuk thing. We talked about it just a second ago. Noisy off seasons almost always lead to disappointing regular seasons. So these two holdouts, these are big, man, and I'm really curious what you think. If Trent Williams isn't there, or if this lingers a little bit more into training camp, if this messes up the fluidity of the offense, how much could this affect the 49ers season?
Oh, it's huge. I think Trent Williams is more of a concern and something that 49ers fans need to worry about more than Brandon Aiyuk. I think if you could go back, if you're John Lynch back in time, if you had Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel in the same class, if you had to pick which contract you want, you do more with Deebo on offense. The ability for him to run the football and catch out of the backfield and how explosive he is. But for Brandon Aiyuk, his ability in one-on-one situations, the aggressive catching on the outside, the ability to take off the top off the defense, I think personally, if I'm John Lynch, I would go to Brandon Aiyuk. But now you're in a tough situation with Trent Williams. I think Trent Williams is the most important player on this roster, period. You look at his stats from last year. I know there's not a lot of stats on offensive linemen. He didn't allow a single sack in 413 pass blocking snaps last season. The crazy pass rushers that we see, the athletic edge rushers that continue to get faster and quicker every single year, the Micah Parsons of the world, the Josh Allens of the world, the Myles Garretts that they faced last year, not a single snap. He allowed 18 pressures with a pressure rate of 4.4% per dropback. That's pretty insane. And I think with how small the market is of offensive tackles, and you really can't breed offensive tackles, and it's so hard to find them in the National Football League, and hopefully for the Arizona Cardinals, Paris Johnson can be one of those guys. I think they've got to pay Trent Williams first. And for Brandon Aiyuk, it might be one of those situations where you say, hey, you can either play for this roster, or I don't know how likely it is they trade him. But I think Trent Williams is got to be one of those concerned. And that's a guy that's not budging, and that's not a guy that says, I think he knows his value, and he could go, hey, I don't want to be in camp. I know my value. I'm 32, 31 years old. I've been in the league. I've proven it. Whereas a guy like Brandon Aiyuk, it's just like, man, I just don't know if he's just – I don't know. It's a sticky situation. Me talking about it, I even kind of sputter about it. I don't even know what to say about, those two and what the 49ers have to do. It's a lot for John Lynch.
Well, it's hard because Brandon Aiyuk is clearly important to that 49ers team. Like, he clearly is, right? Like, we're not going to be crazy about it. He's probably the best pure just wide receiver. Deebo Samuel does a lot of things really, really well. But even last year, I think Pro Football Focus rated Brandon Aiyuk the second best graded wide receiver last year. He is like Brock Purdy's favorite guy at times. But None of that matters if Trent Williams isn't there. That offensive line, I've mentioned it once, I'll mention it again, not very good. Trent Williams is a first-ballot Hall of Fame offensive tackle, and he probably still has a couple years left in him. He's been really, really good. If he was on the market right now, he'd get a fat payday from someone, whether it was the Cardinals, whether it was the Chiefs, it doesn't matter. They'd figure it out. That's how good Trent Williams is. And so, yeah, the Brandon Aiyuk thing's interesting, but it could just cause more feathers to ruffle. If Trent Williams gets paid before Brandon Aiyuk because CMC got paid, then Trent Williams got paid, and Brandon Aiyuk is stuck waiting, left in the rain for someone to act like they care about him. So 49ers have some real issues.
Yeah, and I think for Brandon Aiyuk, you sent over a text to Trent Williams like, hey, man, can you just can you just get paid so I can get my money? We all want to stay here. We all want to win a championship. And that's a real thing with some of these players, including Brandon Aiyuk. What do you value more? Do you value winning a championship and taking less money? Or do you know your value and go to the Commanders or go to the Patriots and get some of that $38 million that you want to get? Another wide receiver that's holding out, CeeDee Lamb. Real interested to hear your thoughts here. This is a guy that was the leader in receptions last year with 135. He's entering his final year of his rookie contract. This is a guy that's proven to not have any injury history. This is a guy that's been reliable for the Cowboys, beats double teams. He's willing to absorb these fines to skip mandatory minicamp. And, they're another franchise, too, with the Cowboys that have a tough situation and a lot of decisions to make when you got a dynamic elite wide receiver, you got Dak Prescott, and you got Micah Parsons to deal with in the future. What are your thoughts about CeeDee Lamb? I think it's deserving for him to hold out.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm CeeDee Lamb, I want to get my money. I believe they were either the first or second best offense last year. The Miami Dolphins might have been number one, but either way, a top two offense. That team doesn't have Michael Gallup anymore. Trent Ferguson was pretty good last year for the Dallas Cowboys. He was kind of a stud tight end, really filling in the holes of that tight end group when I forgot the last
Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson.
What did I say?
I think you said Terrence Ferguson.
Oh, Terrence Ferguson was a wide receiver a long, long time ago. So my bag was deep there. But Jake Ferguson, sorry, the tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. I think Terrence Ferguson was also a wide receiver.
I think Terrence Ferguson actually is the Oregon tight end. I think Terrence.
Is my bag that deep? But anyways, let me ask you this really
Terrence
quickly.
Williams, the wide receiver for the Cowboys.
This is what I wanted to ask you. Who is in bigger hot water right now? The San Francisco 49ers or the Dallas Cowboys?
Ooh. I think the San Francisco 49ers.
Ooh, that's interesting. I think that's really interesting. As much as I want to say the San Francisco 49ers, because although I can be unbiased, I feel like that's like my superpower. I can be completely unbiased in this stuff. I wish it was the 49ers. The Dallas Cowboys, if they don't have CeeDee Lamb, and he's not going to play without one, that's it. That's their offense. I think Dak is really good in the regular season. If he doesn't have a security blanket in CeeDee Lamb,
that's a good point.
Man,
you've convinced me.
It can all come crumbling down. If it's the 49ers, they do have a lot. Like they have a lot of weapons on that team, and Kyle Shanahan's just really, really good. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, it's kind of a CeeDee Lamb or bust offense at times. I don't think you're crazy at all. I just think it's that. I think the Niners right now are in a little bit of hot water, but they have a lot of things that can still fix it. Like it can still be repaired. The Dallas Cowboys, if they don't have CeeDee Lamb, it's like legitimately a CeeDee Lamb or bust offense. So
yeah, I think when you originally said that, the first thought that sparked to my mind was just the jump of Brock Purdy going from $725,000 a year to potentially $65 million a year. And then when you started talking, I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. They got CMC. They do have Deebo Samuel. They do have some weapons on defense in Kittle. They'll make it work even if Brandon Ayuk's gone. Or even if Trent Williams is gone, they're really good drafting. But, yeah, you're right. When you look at the Dallas Cowboys right now, you lose CeeDee Lamb. You've got Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, Kavontae Turpin, Jalen Brooks, and Racey McMath as your wide receivers.
I don't even know who that last guy is. I think
Zeke is your running back.
Zeke's back, by the way. I totally forgot about that.
I hate that, man.
I think you made up the last guy's wide receiver's name.
No. I'm looking at their 3D.
I'd cut that guy.
Racey McMath is their
I
third
would cut
wide
that
receiver.
guy just based off his name. That guy, I can tell you right now, is not going to be a good wide receiver in the NFL. But anyways, you look at their list. Like, it's a lot of CeeDee Lamb or bust. If they don't have that guy, this goes from a 10-win Dallas Cowboys team to what? 6 wins? Like, that's how important he is to that offense.
Yeah, the amount of games where he took over and he was the reason why they won games, I agree with you for CeeDee Lamb. That's why it brought to our other point we were talking about Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, hey, man, you're a veteran. Why not for Dak Prescott? I understand while the iron's hot and stuff, you got to make your money. But you got to think with this roster, you got to pull a Jalen Brunson. You got to pull a Patrick Mahomes and make less money so you can get your guy to get some more money.
Just really quickly before we cut to break, just to really ride home the point of how busy the Cowboys or how much in trouble and hot water the Cowboys could be in. First in receptions last year, second in receiving yards, third in touchdowns. Yeah, they're going to want to re-sign CeeDee Lamb, and I don't blame the guy for holding out.